Bona tarda a totes.
Good afternoon to you all. We are going to start the second dialogue on spring references, and we would like to welcome you from the Born Center for Culture and Memory. We would like to thank you for being here in this room. It is extremely rewarding to have some people here again, and we would also like to thank all the people who have joined us through a screen. This cycle is curated by Paula Kufer. She's here sitting at the desk, and it's to be seen as part of the programming of the program of an exhibition called Education in Freedom, which is showing now at the Born. If you've not visited yet, we invite you to do that. It's a historical review in Barcelona from the early 20th century all the way to the 1970s, at a time of difficult times when Barcelona was going through troublesome periods and Barcelona was boiling. And at that time, well, there were some interesting initiatives in education to open up our gaze and not only focusing on Barcelona. We thought it was interesting to look outside of Barcelona and go a little bit further. Tabi, are you hearing the translation?
Yeah, I'm hearing.
Wonderful. And we thought that we would look at other perspectives, other international and local perspectives, combining the local and the international gaze on these topics, on many of the current topics that we should approach. We are convinced that fight is educational. So let me thank our guests for being here today. We have Tabi Joda from Cameroon. I think his struggle, though, is a global struggle, and he comes from Nigeria. It's a pity that you are not here in Barcelona. We wish we could have brought you around, uh, and we greet you and thank you for being here. Then we also have Joana Bregolat, who is going to be here and will share her knowledge. I will now give the floor to Paula, who is going to present our guests, to introduce our guests. Good morning to you all, both those who are here in the room and those who are connected online. Thank you very much, Marisol, for your words. Thank you very much to the technical staff at El Born for making this session technically possible. It's not easy. We are still in a situation of a pandemic. This has a lot to do with what we are going to discuss this evening about the ecological crisis we are all experiencing. So, as I said, it's a little bit difficult. We have simultaneous translation. We have Tabi, who is joining us from far away. We wish we could have brought him here to Barcelona. We hope that we will have the opportunity to do so in the future. And Joana Bregolat, who is here with us. As Marife said, this cycle called References is focusing on contemporary pedagogies. And we have chosen three different axes to try and fight the inequalities we see in current times. Inequality and the fight for hegemony is part of the drivers of history. And we believed it was essential to discuss a few topics that would have to do with the exhibition, with the show that is ongoing at the Born, entitled Education in Freedom. We believed it was also important to discuss other radically topical issues such as the networks, fake news, the increase of authoritarianism, the democratic participation in public life through the networks, and so on. And today we are going to talk about the humanitarian crisis that we are experiencing at the moment, and we have a forthcoming session on feminism. We believe the ecological disaster is one of the most relevant challenges that humankind has had to face. We are currently experiencing extremely serious consequences of the extractivist approach of the capitalist system, which is creating bonds with the environment, with people, and with nature, which is only based on profitability and power accumulation, and they are totally unethical. And we believed it was interesting to look at the different pedagogies we can develop. How can we educate ourselves to live in freedom, in justice, and to establish an ethical bond with the environment, with the sea, with the oceans, with the air we breathe, and also an ethical bond between ourselves and with others. That's why we thought Tabi Joda was one of the most suitable persons, because he can share his experience from Africa, so that he can share his know-how and his struggles, so that we can appropriate those struggles as well and share them too, and go a little bit beyond the symbolic frontier between the North and the South, so that we can jointly build strategies to fight the climate, the looming climate crisis. Tabi Joda is the executive director of DNA International, a Nigerian organization working for environmental sustainability on a global scale. He's also coordinating the 1 Million Trees for Africa project, which tries to find the link between climate crisis and humanitarian crisis. And they work with local communities, especially women and young people, so that they can live in their own homeland. He's also participated in disaster reduction programs at the United Nations, and he's received awards for his task as an agro forester. He received the Kuwait Information Prize for the an African Policy Center, and in 2018 he was chosen as one of the young people and one of the young ambassadors of the African forest landscape in restoration initiatives. So he's a very young person, but he has a long-standing experience in this fight, in this struggle, and his task is impressive, admirable, and we believe that we can establish a really interesting dialogue with Joana Bregolat. We are also extremely grateful for Joana being here with us today. Joana is a researcher. She works at the Observatory for Debt in Globalization. She researches on climate, energy, and ecofeminism. She is a politologist with a degree from Pompeu Fabra University. She also has a master's degree on women and citizenship at the Women's and Gender Institute. She also has been a member of the students movement, and she's currently participating in ecological and feminist movements through Fridays for Future and through a group called Ecofeminist Action. She's also very young, and you can also read her in a book published by Silone, As If There Were a Tomorrow, essays for an eco-socialist transition. We are really happy that we were able to put together this event, and we are extremely grateful for your presence here. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Tabi. Thank you very much, Tabi, for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Paula, and thank you, my co-speaker, Joana, and thank you to all the esteemed, amazing guys at Elbon. And of course, I'm very, very thankful and humble for this opportunity to have me speak at your esteemed center. I also thank all the viewers out there who have the mind to understand the importance of such a subject we are discussing today. I am truly humbled. And I want to add to what Paula has said by saying, if there ever was a time that our hearts should be turned to the cause of our planet's safety and its ecological sustainability, I dare say this is the time. Since the day I changed my mind from traveling across the Mediterranean and the Sahara to migrate to Europe, I committed myself to plant 1 billion trees in Africa to restore our degraded ecosystems, create green growth opportunities to improve livelihoods, create local jobs, create improved systems, economic and social systems in our local communities to contribute to the much needed global ecological balance and resilience. That has been my simple promise to humanity, a promise born from the dream and values that each new generation in our world should be better than the generation before, and each generation should live a life that protects the environment that they meet better than they met it. And that dream has inspired billions across the globe. And that is the dream that I strongly believe in. And that is the dream that has led me to this journey that I am speaking to all of you today in raising the concerns and crafting the solutions for the safety of our common planet Earth. Today, as we speak, our entire world is caught at crossroads of myriads of ecological breakdown. We see ruthless mining, excessive and reckless forest logging, mostly illegal, and fragmentation of our very, very vital forest ecosystems, which are causing unprecedented deforestation scales and degrading our landscapes at the expense of vulnerable communities who depend so much on these natural ecosystems for income, for food, for well-being, and for livelihood. But this is happening with far-reaching consequences, often beyond the visible. But it is obvious that today's industrial life of modernity and capitalism seem unaware of these dangers. It seems completely undisturbed and indifferent to how much we have lost ourselves to the essential links that anchor us to the rest of humanity and nature. Yet the system is drowning before our eyes. Our food systems, as we all can see, are collapsing. Our natural soil fertility is degrading day in, day out, proliferating a new system of excessive processed foods, excessive use of toxic chemicals, declining our own very human health and the health of the species around us. Toxic mining waste are polluting our freshwater systems and oceans and hurting vital aquatic resources billions of people depend upon. This is sad. It's appalling. This depletions not only hurts the immediate physical environment where it's happening, it not only alters the behavior of the humans and the species that depend on these resources for survival, it fuels resentment, deprivation, and depresses the biological stability of our own very environment and triggers negative reactions. For instance, right now, you and I are living in a new era of the COVID-19. It presents a new complex scenario in an already fragile situation of climate change hazards and disasters that are undermining millions and millions of lives across the globe. This is traced to results of excessive degradation of our own ecosystems and our biodiversity. These losses, consequently, we are all in this today. African, European, American, Latin American, or Asian, large, big, small, white, black, we are all in this today. Just imagine how tormenting, how damaging these ecological disasters or ecological risk are creating more and more vulnerabilities to people. For instance, imagine right now in the COVID-19 era, where you are struggling to save someone's life from dying to COVID-19 today, but tomorrow that person is dying or being killed by a flood driven by extreme weather events, driven by climate change. So we see our own very actions tearing down the fabric of our priceless commonwealth, nature. But before COVID-19, we have had pandemics, we've had catastrophes, wars, pestilence, pest infestations, and different types of diseases. But it seemed to the world, to so many, I must be frank, especially the leaders, like nothing ever happened before. It concludes that we have a very short memory, sadly. We've lost our sense of historical consciousness. We lost our sense of cultural rationality. We have lost the memories of the past, the memories of colonialism and the expropriations that happened, the human pain, the material deprivations that took place, the human hurt, the anger, the resentment, and the feeling of social injustices, deprivation, and hurt. We've lost touch with how the past plays out in the present. That is very unfortunate. Like Paula earlier said, this has fractured the foundation of our ethical and moral consciousness for nature protection and environmental sustainability. Can you actually use your own hands to destroy the very home that you find comfort in living in? It's a provocative question everyone here should carry home today. And of course, I know your answer is no. But why then are we destroying this very nature? And unfortunately, many European cities right now can feel more climate-driven heat waves. We've had reports of sandstorms or sand pushed by windstorms or sandstorms from the Sahara Desert in Africa into the streets in New York and right in the streets in Milan. And of course, this is very important to note, but the realities most often are downplayed and given different impressions. In Africa, for instance, these ecological degradations are creating already a catastrophic convergence of disasters and despicable human displacement, human insecurity, food insecurity, and a lot of suffering. I'm speaking this from the experience I have working in the Great Green Wall communities on the front line, where people are feeling firsthand threats from the risk and vulnerabilities of ecological breakdown. And this is leaving thousands of young Africans desperate. This desperation is pushing countless of them to risk their lives, either wanting to migrate into miserable cities where they harsh slums, or they risk their lives trekking across the Sahara Desert in dire thirst and hunger to travel across the Mediterranean, either ending up drowning in the Mediterranean Sea or becoming climate refugees in an already overstretched Europe. Italy's Lampedusa, we all can attest, is an often overwhelmed European city with African migrants. The question is, what is pushing these migrants? Who are they? And what do they want? From whom? So in 2020 alone, about 2,000 African migrants died in the Mediterranean Sea. Similar migration patterns are actually occurring in Europe, Eastern and Western Europe. But we have to understand, most often these are neglected truths. Our demographics are changing before our eyes. The youth bulge is a truth. It's a reality. It comes with huge youth unemployment. It comes with youth radicalism. It comes with huge challenges. But these challenges are not being spoken, talked about and taken into consideration as much as they should have. So our world has enough food to feed everybody. Why? While some have so much to eat and waste, others don't have any. Everywhere is overwhelmed with thoughtless dissipation of material and human resources that are necessary for the conservation of harmonious and sustainable human communities. Yet, fires of suffering and strife are raging round the world. When hope is lost, when dignity is undermined, dreams are shattered. And a young American, for instance, fighting with the French Foreign Legion in 1916 wrote before he died in action. He said, "I will meet my death at some disputed barricade, on some scared slope of battered hill, at midnight in some flaming town." This, of course, to you and I, represented a terrifying waste of youth and human potential, a cruel squandering of positive forces of humanity and resources. And the question is, what for? For decades now, we have yet to find a reasonable answer to these questions. Are we not still guilty? If to a less violent degree, of the thoughtlessness, of the improvidence with regard to our morality, our future, and our humanity. What does this remind us? Just like Paula said earlier, this is seriously a pain to humanity. And we should take note of it. Wherever human suffering is ignored, there will be the seeds of conflict. For nothing degrades humanity, nothing degrades human dignity, infuriates human beings, angers humans, and rages humans like suffering. Regrettably, some of our European friends and leaders are either complacent about these, quote unquote, or they live in isolation of this reality. But we should make no mistake. These challenges are undermining global cohesion, triggering instability, and fracturing democratic systems, like Paula earlier said. They are fueling political divisions that are triggering negative forces, eating away at the very foundation of a peaceful, sustainable Earth. So we see potential crisis at scale if current ecological damages are left unhalted. Now we should be asking our questions, or asking ourselves this question: what kind of ecological pedagogies, systems, and practices do we need at this moment to avoid potential ecological calamity or potential ecological calamities? In a wider sense, we need disruptive ecological pedagogies. Like my good friend Paula earlier said, it is to rethink, reconscious, create new systems of cultural dialogues that should leverage cultural conscientization and reorientation that considers not just the current problems that we are facing right now, but takes into consideration, very serious consideration, the historical antecedents of how the current challenges we are going through actually came about. It means transitioning from the impacts of colonialism and decolonizing our systems and our attitudes. It means making no mistake of attempting to solve today's problems with the solutions of yesterday. It means tearing down the iron curtain of the North and the South dichotomy, tearing down these gaps and bridging them in a very inclusive and comprehensive manner, such that it actually presents a new dawn for a new global system of ecological resilience. And we have to start by acknowledging our past failures and reducing the growing sense of deprivation and the triggers, the push and the pull factors that are leading to these deprivations, the perceived sense of injustices and the corruption that we are all suffering from today. To continue to strive to raise human capability, to reinforce the positive forces of nature, to minimize the negative forces that are tearing down the very global system that we all live on. We must positively explore the opportunities of our diversity as engines of human relations, not engines of human division. They should be the drivers that push for greater human consciousness and cultural awareness of the nature and peaceful coexistence of humanity with nature. Because nature has given to us all what we need. In return, we must give to nature what it needs from us. Protecting it, conserving it, loving it with all our hearts. It means making good not just the individual responsibility, but the collective moral obligation and conscious effort that each one of us must make to enhance and protect our natural environment by building a sustainable future for the generation to come, so that they can have a very safe and sustainable environment in which to build their own lives. It means changing our attitudes by thinking that we should be better. And for us to be better, we need to be better together in building a safer world, a stronger world, a more resilient world, and a peaceful world, because these cannot happen without this conscious effort. If we made a world that was destroyed, for instance, what will have been of us today? Certainly this meeting wouldn't have been taking place. We would have been victims of the Armageddon. And why then should we leave a destroyed one for the generation that is coming? If we value our children, if we value our own grandchildren, we should be thinking about how to structure a safe and sustainable world for them. But first for ourselves, because we need it right now to breathe great, good, fresh oxygen that keeps us healthy and alive. So many beneficiaries of this failing system, of course, argue that free market economies wouldn't progress if they take actions that are compatible to protecting and saving nature. They say the idea of sustainability harms modern business. I dare say this assertion is falsehood. Free market economies functioning under the right ethical regulations and moral incentives are the most appropriate agents of collective human growth and sustainability. Therefore, industries need to imbibe ethical standards and harness the economic potentials of clean growth. I repeat, clean growth, to reduce the ecological pressures threatening our very existence. From the way we grow our food, to the way we process our food, to the way we live our lives in our homes, to the way we create jobs, to the way we transport the food that we produce, and the way we communicate with each other, and of course, the way we generate energy, and the way we grow and educate our children, to the way we create our own dresses that we wear on us, all must be ecologically and ethically sensitive. We have only one planet to protect. And the one choice that we have is to take care of this planet, to protect it with all compassion. We have all what it takes to bring the right practices that saves our Earth from any ecological calamity. What is the use of our science, we should ask ourselves? Is it for good or for destruction? If science is good for destruction, then science is of no good to humanity. But if it should be for good, if it should be for human good, it should be to protect and enhance the human potential to live a sustainable and a healthy life. So we should have the good faith to do just that. Building a resilient planet, a place better for each one of us. That is why redefining our ecological pedagogies, raising climate action in practice and in principle, scaling global economic and investments on cultural consciousness and ecological sanity is an urgent task we all should be behind. So today, as I speak to you, and as you listen to me, kindly remember the often neglected truth that one life of any human lost to an ecological disaster is a life too much. So when we come together as common humanity in ethical compliance, compassion for Mother Nature, and empathy for each one of us, there is nothing we cannot achieve. That is the way, that is the message, and that is the practice we should take home, and that is the practice we should be living for, and that is the task we all should be behind. I thank you for listening.
Bé, moltíssimes gràcies, Tabi.
Thank you very much, Tabi, for your lucid presentation and for the emotion that you put into play. Thank you very much for mentioning ethics and the links we establish with our environment and among ourselves, among people. Lots of topics are now on the table, and we will now start the dialogue with Joana. But to start with, I would like to say that in a way, we are showing our disagreement with the capitalist system we live in, where the rights of the market seem to be bigger and more powerful than the rights of the people. But if we don't have an environment to live in, if we don't have a harmonious relationship with our environment, life becomes impossible. Life anywhere becomes impossible, and the humanitarian crisis that we are witnessing, migrations, people dying in the Mediterranean, young people who are losing their lives, chasing a dream for a supposedly better life, are part of our thoughts. And this is helping us in the attempt to create a better conscience, not only a better conscience and awareness, not only for survival, but for living well. I guess that there are many topics in what has been discussed here. What do you want to add, Joana? Well, first of all, I would like to thank Tabi for his thoughts and his presentation, and to thank you for sharing your own ideas on this. I would like to discuss many of the topics that have been mentioned in Tabi's talk, but I'm aware of the time available, which is limited. We are currently meeting in Barcelona. We are now in 2021 at a time where we did not expect to be moving around in face masks, but rather we would prefer to be in a different situation. Despite all of this, I think we need to understand that we're living in a world that is collapsing. And a collapse is not something that will happen, that happened overnight. It's not that the world is bursting and there's nothing behind it, but we are witnessing a series of crises, increases crisis, which add on top of each other and lead to an increasingly unsustainable situation. For instance, environmental degradation is accelerated. We are seeing food crisis, as Tabi said. We see how some diseases are moving from animals to humans, as happened with COVID, and we're seeing how the pollution of the commons and many other things are becoming our day-to-day reality. They are becoming our daily reality, and it shouldn't be so. We're witnessing how in this crisis realities are becoming more and more apart. We're seeing the inequality our systems entail. We see how there is a first-class world and a second-class world, and this is the consequence of a colonial, extractive, patriarchal past. Many of these elements are still prevalent nowadays, and we see that out in the street and in different regions. And I believe that we need to insist on the fact that we do not all have the same responsibilities or the same background. We are currently in an unequal combined situation. We're experiencing the impact of the consequences in the south and in the north, but within the north, there are many different norths. Also in the south, there are many different souths in the plural. And when we talk about migration and when we look at the Mediterranean, we need to remember that we have our own legacy. We have our own background and our history. We in Spain, in Catalonia, were migrants as well. We also left our country because there was no future here and we wanted to build a decent life for ourselves. We've also received immigrants from other parts of Spain, and that still happens all the time. And everyone needs, I repeat, needs to uh, aspire to a decent life, and one needs to be able to live in full enjoyment of freedom. Now that we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Occupy movement, well, one of their mottos was youth without a future. And well, the slogan has changed, but the problem is still there. We are still hanging in there, trying to build the utopias that Arcadi Oliveras talked about. We are still fighting for a decent life, and everything Tabi was saying is precisely along the same lines. You need to build your own future. You should not lose yourself. You should keep on moving forward, and to do so in a way that is worthwhile for yourself, but also, and especially for those who come behind, for those who come after you, because we're now talking about young generations and young people. Yes, the impact of climate change, of the climate crisis and the humanitarian crisis, which are a disaster, a catastrophe, which is something that should not happen, will be much worse in the coming years. They will be much worse in 30 or 40 years down the road, because this will increase progressively and disasters will accelerate. It will not be something that, well, we will find a storm and we will be locked in the house for a week, or I don't know, people, it will snow in Madrid and people will be putting up their pictures on the Instagram, or that there will be power outages. No, this will, the crisis will grow exponentially, and it will be translated in different ways and forms in different parts of the planet. We need to be ready for that. We need to be able to we need to find an answer to this. And we need to listen. We need to listen, and we also need to shut up. That's very difficult for us in the global north or in the global center. We need to shut up and listen to those who are in the front line. We need to find a solution, listening to those who sustain life. And this learning process is something that we have often not accepted yet. I don't think we have accepted that we don't need to be the white savior of anyone. The idea is not to save someone from the other corner in the planet. We should rather generate synergies, listen to each other, to create these synergies, and to work together for a better world without leaving anyone behind, without damaging anyone. So it's interesting to talk about transitions. When we talk about green transitions in the global north, these transitions are green for us, but they are not green for everyone, because we're talking about extractive chains. We are causing bigger impacts on territories that in territories that are not ours. It's the not in my backyard mentality, and that's not the way we should move forward. So we need to have the tools to understand that, okay, we need to shut up and listen. You don't need to stay at home and shut up, but you need to shut up and listen from those, to listen to those who are working on site. That's why it's so interesting to learn from Tabi. We do not only need to look at what happens in Latin America. Let's listen to what's going on in Africa or in Asia, everywhere else in the planet. Many of the things they are developing there, many of the things that they have tried to develop there, unless they are properly rooted in the territory, they will not progress. Just like we don't like to have other people come in and tell us what we need to do to make things better, we need to understand that you need to feel you are appealed by the problem. It's not an issue that you should just, land there for one day and help somebody else. It's rather a long-term project. You need to bear in mind the location sustainability. You need to listen to what the people there say. It's not just an external group of people who will go there and help them. No, it needs to come from the grassroots. We need to understand it. We need to replicate it, and we need to do that collectively. And I have a feeling I'm speaking too much. If I'm going overboard, just let me know. Another point for discussion is growth. How to approach growth. When we talk about growth in the global north, or at least in Spain, I don't like the concept of global north. I'm using that just to make myself understood, even if I don't like the concept itself. Well, here we often forget that the word growth has been closely linked to a capitalist free market system, which only understands growth in terms of economic value. Growth means only filling our pockets. That's what we have always understood by growth. And at the time when environmentalist movements, we reject the word growth. We reject the term growth. It's like a protest. And sometimes when we do that, we have a very Eurocentric gaze on the problem. But we look at this from the point of view of degrowth. And that's not something that everyone needs to embark on. We need to understand that when we talk about transitions, futures, and changes in our productive model, we are talking about what we need. We cannot we cannot think that our situation is prevalent elsewhere. It wouldn't make sense. We have unequal responsibilities. We have different ways of living, and we also have some debts. The global north has a debt, an economic debt, financial debt, ecological debt, and caring debts. And there needs to be an idea of repairing what we have done for everything we do. And we need to accept. That's also an important term. We need to accept, because very often we have a very logical narrative. It looks really nice. It sounds wonderful from a policy point of view, but these are empty words. We do not understand the material impact of what it means when we say certain things. It's hard for us to talk about growth because we need to ungrow. But when we talk about growth in other latitudes, in other regions, it means something that goes beyond the economy. It means talking about restoration and environmental assets and liabilities. And we need to talk about needs and limits, which is what we do when we reject the term growth. We want to say that we want decent lives that are worthwhile living, with a logical of well-being and good living. We want to be inspired by rights. We shouldn't have first-class and second-class citizens here, and that's important too. And I would like to throw a few questions here. I don't know if they will be the right ones or not, but I mean, they will help me get organized. In the current context, people talk about how important young people are for climate change. And Tabi's project embarks and embraces young people. It helps build communities. and I would like you to tell us more about the role of young people in your projects, beyond the fact that these are the most vulnerable and precarious populations. Please tell us how young people can become the agent for change. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Tabi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Joana, for your very brilliant perspectives, and it sinks very deep into my heart. And I think it reminds me of my great-grandparents, who I know were very, victimized victims or objects of slavery and colonialism. And being one of the educated person in my family and reading through that history just sends a lot of goose pimples and perhaps tears running down my heart when you reminded about the death, the ecological death, the care death that our brothers and sisters, the other side, owe humanity. But that death is not just the death for those who perpetrated. It's also a death for the onlookers. It's also a death for those who were silent, because the improvidence of these acts cannot only be, in fact, it cannot only be attributed to one side. So it's also time to rebuild the common ways, as I said earlier, common solutions for this sustainable pathway. And now to the youth. Youth is power. But youth is only power when the energy of the youth is productively put into productive development than destructive development. And of course, on the front line of climate change, climate risk, and ecological disasters, where I work across, the very vulnerable and risk-prone communities across West Central Africa entirely, it is often a painful experience where you see a young man having $1 and he's struck by a hard choice of deciding whether to use that dollar to buy medicine for a headache or to buy food to eat for themselves. If you were in that condition, what will be your choice? Will you choose to take medicine and stay on an empty stomach, or will you choose to stay on an empty stomach and perhaps die from the headache or the fever, malaria? So these are some of the provocative realities that we see down there on the field, in the grassroots. It happens to the women, it happens to the youth, it happens to children. And when you say thousands and thousands of children are dying from malaria in Africa, what occur exposed from reckless mining, it becomes a strong habitat for mosquitoes, very easy access to killing young people, infecting them with malaria. So it has to do with, understanding who are young people, who are they? These are people who are living in their communities, to their ecosystem, to their safe and protected biodiversity, where they can actually plant trees, take care of those trees, nurture those trees, and elevate the animals and feed from these natural things. But when these resources are actually challenged, they are degraded, what happens? It actually alters the behavior of these productive young people to become destructive rather than productive. So at the end of the day, it hampers the power, what you say, the youth power, that power of the youth to become active, proactive, and productive agents of sustainable development, they become susceptible, they become vulnerable, they become objects of risk. Instead of being the agents of change, they are the victims of the very system or the very degradations that have been affected or that have been created or been orchestrated in these communities. So then, but going around it, despite the odds, you know, really exceptional young people out there in these fields that are defying all these odds and craving for change, working on the field in creating this change, because I work with thousands and thousands of them, planting trees, regrowing the forest, regenerating the forest, restoring the ecosystems, and reviving the biodiversity, because they have understood that time waits for no one, and this is the time for them, because no one else would do it for them unless they do it. So it also have to do with the context. Young people in the Sahel are different from young people in the Savannah region of Africa. Young people in the Savannah region and the Sahel are different from the young people in the coastal regions of Africa. But all these places are subject to the historical damages that have an ongoing damages of ecological reckless destruction and expropriation. So repairing and conceiving minds, young people who have the mind to contribute to sustainable development, climate action, means restructuring and hurriedly restoring these communities, restoring these landscapes. And of course, one thing, quote unquote, often neglected is that we don't only restore landscape, we should restore the livelihoods, because the minds of the people are as powerful as any energy that they need. It's as powerful as any tool that they need. So the attitudes, the mindset must be restored alongside the restoration. This gives the opportunity of unlocking the potentials of young people and unlocking their importance as agents of climate change, agents of change, agents of sustainability.
Em semblen com... O sigui, crec que al final...
I believe the conclusion of being appealed by these ideas, being on the ground, in the field, contribute to restoration, participate in the activities generated there, to be able to survive and to live and thrive in the territory is a core element of all this, because in the end, it means that you feel you're developing something that allows you to live, thrive, develop, and will bear fruit for future generations. And I think this is the ultimate goal when we try to achieve a decent life not only for us, but also for future generations. And that's why I believe that if we get involved in this logic of pedagogies, there is a central element, at least here in Spain, in the global north. We need to understand the notion of vulnerability. I say vulnerability because we often thought that we were omnipotent and we could implement any project we wanted because there were no consequences for anything. There was always someone behind that would sort things out, but we are all interdependent. We are eco-dependent. And in ecofeminism, these are key terms when we want to think about and rethink about where we want to move and where we need to go. Because in the end, we are bodies who depend on other bodies. We are bodies who depend on forests, rivers, and mountains. We need clean air. We need fresh water, non-polluted water. And in the end, we need an environment to thrive. And these are elements we forgot. We are turning our backs on our human condition. we forget we are yet another species in the ecosystem and in the biosphere. So these elements are essential when we talk about where we want to go, because if you're not aware of the fact that your body is not made of concrete, or your body is not like Iron Man's body, you need to understand that you are made of flesh, and you need to understand that you sometime will not feel well, and then you will need someone to help you and care for you. The same thing happens with the ecosystem. When an ecosystem is damaged, things get worse and worse, and that has an impact on the territory and on the body itself. And this is essential, and we've totally forgotten about that. We also need to understand that this is not only a challenge for us, and that is where the feminist side of me shows up. It is also a challenge for those who forget that life is sustained, and it's often sustained by women. Women are the ones who have sustained communities. Women were always at the front line, and we need to be aware of the fact that this happens. And if we create the chains of care and 1,000 different conflicts, very often those who are behind and carry the weight of these problems is women in all regions of the world. Sorry, I'm going off track a little bit, so I apologize, but I'm really liking this discussion. I like the idea of the society which has is a victim of violence. We young people are also victims of violence, and we are in a context where if you don't stand for things, nobody is going to stand for things on your behalf. And this is not only a thing of, well, being very clever theoretically, listening to all the postcards, to all the nicest and coolest podcasts in the planet. No, you don't need to be only wise. You need to practice your wisdom. You need to do things too. So we were talking about restoration here in Catalonia or in Barcelona. We need to restore our own ecosystems too. We are not very keen. I mean, come on, our ecosystem is not that good either. Look at the pollution we have here. Our air pollution rates are huge. So we also need to look after our rivers, our coasts. We need to understand that the coast is not only a place to go and sunbathe and enjoy. The coastline is also a place for life. There's not only humans in this planet, there are other beings too. And we need to reflect upon the fact that, sorry, I lost track of what I was thinking. No problem. I think we also need to accept, we need to try to understand that it's not wrong not to be able to do everything ourselves. I think Tabi said that himself. There are many challenges that in the end appeal to us individually, but this is not a conflict we'll be able to solve on our own. This challenge needs to be tackled collectively. This is a challenge which needs to be approached from a collective perspective, and we need to fight for these things together. That's why the idea of interdependence is so important, because if we don't realize that we need each other, that we need to meet, to think together, and to have a change of mentality, not only here together and together globally, unless we do that, change is not going to happen. Lots of topics are on the table. One of the axes is our extractive relationship, our economic relationship to the environment, and, well, the consequences of colonialism, exploitation, historical extractivism on full continents such as Africa. And here my question is, decolonization has not led to proper territorial decolonization. It has not led to economic decolonization because the exploitation relationships are still there. And we need to find other ways to refer to the North and the South and this relationship as well. I think it's a very good symptom that we at the North believe we feel uncomfortable with this term North because it shows our own vulnerabilities and the violences that we are all subject to. So this links these vulnerabilities which meet and look after each other, go beyond the territories, and they are an essential part of any ethical relationship. It is very clear that with our awareness, with the awareness raising task, especially addressed to young people, we have now more possibilities to change the current economic system, because simply crying out loud that this is happening is not enough to change things. Changing the name of a territory does not lead to social justice. Decolonization does not lead to social justice or to proper political or economic relationships. Therefore, this is a question that I would like to throw to both of you. How do we relate with capitalism? What can we ask these ethereal, invisible powers that rule our lives so radically and with the invisible hand? What should we ask them to do? How can we generate changes in these relationships? How can we ask for change in the relationship with our environment, with other people, with labor relationships that damage persons and ecosystems' lives? I know it's a difficult question I am addressing to both of you, and we believe pedagogy is essential. We believe awareness raising is also essential, and something that you also mentioned is the strength of young people at a time of a historical turning point. The COVID pandemic could be a way to bring us together, because we've seen how our lives have come to a standstill and we had to rethink many things. Will we be able somehow to rebuild and recreate the bonds between us? And how are we going to cope with transitions? Will green transitions, as you said, Joana, will do something else? For instance, will the new policy trade oil for cobalt, for instance? Or are we going to have new redistributive policies to change the relationships between us and with the environment? This is a question that I would like to ask you both.
Tabi, I don't know if you want to speak first.
I come from a community where we always give women the first chance, or the chance to do to do things first before we follow. So maybe Joana might like to take the floor before I follow.
Ok. Vale. Sí, no és una pregunta fàcil per res, però bueno.
It's not an easy question at all. How do we relate to capitalism? For me, ideally, we need to bring down capitalism and to build a new socialist world. I know this raises some doubts and some problems because of our past experience with socialism, but I think we need to build common ground. We need to find a common ground and create an ecological feminist transition, which encompasses the LGBTI movement, the anti-colonial movement, and I don't know how many other oppressions that need to be brought down. I think we need to rethink our grassroots economy. We need to base it on our needs and on the limits. We need to think that we are diverse and diversity is good. It's good to understand that diversity is positive, and in the face of this policy of hatred, we want an economy that is feminist, peaceful, ecological, the economy we want, the new economy we want, as Tabi said, needs to allow for regeneration, needs to be resilient, needs to go further. It should not be a life structure, but should include life. It should embrace life. The economy is not something that happens behind closed doors or in the exchange market, but it's rather what you do when you grow your field, when you tender the land, when you cook your food at home. We need to regain the concept of economy. We should not be only in the hands of the financial markets who only talk about financial growth and speculation. And I think these changes need to involve changes in language. We need to put names to things and call them what they are. We also need to find community projects. And I think that Tabi's collaboration, which is this community and public collaboration, is essential. This is a perfect example because he works with the community. He is in the field instead of speaking on behalf of those who are in the field. So the idea is to see, what do I need? What do we need? Are our needs covered? If not, why not? And after questioning all of this, we need to find a way to find an answer. Because right now, for instance, we have orchards in the east of Spain, in Murcia. Lots of people are very proud of that, but many people in Spain, we cannot buy products, foodstuff from Murcia because we only export them. It doesn't make any sense to produce our foodstuffs here and then export them to thousands of kilometers away from our land. And in exchange, eat food coming from thousands of kilometers away. Globalization is good in many senses, but it also has lots of negative impacts, and we experience those negative impacts on a day-to-day basis in small things. What can you buy in the supermarket, for instance? What can you afford to buy and what can you not afford to buy? And who is to blame for that? Who is criminalized for things which are not conscious? Well, and that is to be defined by whoever. What about rebuilding bonds? Rebuilding bonds requires accepting that many of the things we want to do are not going to be achieved on our own. And that has to do with transitions. For instance, the green transition, if that means a new extractive reality in Africa to obtain rare earths and rare elements, well, that is not going to be a proper transition. It's not going to be a green transition, and it's not going to be ecological or feminist. If you want to do a transition that will increase inequality and will repeat the same pattern we currently live, does not make any sense. I want to change this, and I don't want to change on my own. I need other people who will walk with me, and I need the feeling of wanting to change things becomes common sense, because what we are discussing here is common sense. We want to live well. We want our families to live well, and not only us, but 99% of society, everyone else. So this ideal of living well is something that only 1% of our population can afford. The rest are left out. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Joana. So well. Why I always love giving the space for the women to speak, because they actually carry the whole load of the challenges that we face down in the grassroots. And you've said it so well, Joana. Thank you very much. And I think our friends watching from Congo will be very grateful to you, Joana, for talking about the impact of this rare earth. Like you can see in the Congo right now as we speak, the telephone, the laptops that we are using for this communication are actually ruthlessly, or the cobalt that we all are carrying our cell phone, our laptop, are ruthlessly often mined from the jungles in the Congo and where forests are destroyed, where spring water that large communities depend upon are actually polluted with radioactive materials. Unfortunately, some of them who give out or who are killed for this or who lost their lives or lost their communities and their landscapes for these resources to get into our telephones we are using to make this communication, though it is good, but they don't even have a phone. They don't even have what they can afford this telephone. So, well, that's one thing about the injustices of this of the capitalist system of extractivism that we have to actually challenge head front. And for me, I was speaking with high school or some students in the German school in Sweden yesterday, and they were asking me some questions about cashew. Where does cashew come from, and how is it? So I was very appalled by the truth that they eat cashew, they buy it from the supermarket, the finished product, but they don't know how the cashew tree looks like. And when I showed mango, when I showed pineapple to some growing from its stems, so many of them were flabbergasted because they didn't know how it looks like on the field, on the ground. Isn't that a shame to us? I mean, we should be conscious about this. And these are the realities that those who are pushing this system, protecting this system, kind of propagating this system that tends to give more to a few and less to the many are actually complacent. They are living in isolation of this reality. But I'm happy, and to respond to Paula's question, is that we have to redefine what social justice
Tabi, it's difficult for us to hear you now.
what the rule of law is. What to me? What does it mean to you? I'm sorry, sometimes, can you hear me now?
Yes, now.
Good. So I was saying, like Paula earlier said, we should stop taking old wine and putting in new bottle and calling it new wine. The concept of names must not be our important subject of discussion or engagement. It is a content of policies, the content of the actions that comes down to those who are on the front line of this degradation, of this risk and vulnerabilities. What does social justice mean to a rural woman, and what does it mean to someone in the city center of Barcelona? What does it mean to someone in Sweden? What does the rule of law means to my mother down there in the community? And what does it mean to someone in Milan? We should redefine all these terminologies with content, not by name, in such a way that it is a practice, it is an attitude that breeds these concepts in such a way that they go down, they are manifest with compassion, with empathy, with the consideration that we are all humans drinking the same water with the same H2O and consuming the same oxygen that we deserve to have it fresh. It shouldn't be that I am the master of oxygen and you are the slave of oxygen, or you are the master of carbon dioxide. So who is owning what and who is giving what? Like my good friend Joana said earlier, we should stop looking at someone being the person offering the solution. We all need to be on that table, dialoguing and discussing and crafting the solutions that keeps us on that path to sustainability, where I am an equal with you and you are equal with me. Even if we disagree, we should find common grounds that are all in our best good, the good of humanity. So capitalism as a name or socialism as a name shouldn't be the issue. It should be the content of capitalism or the content of socialism that delivers the solutions that only aids humans' capacity or humans' ability to live a safe, sustainable, and resilient life on a planet Earth that is common to you and I. So this has to be with changing the patterns of the conversations, changing who is taking what decisions. It shouldn't be decisions from the North for the South, solutions from the North for the South, or solutions from the South for the North. It should be solutions from the Earth to the citizens of the Earth. It should be our problem. Like, for instance, COVID-19 did not spare any race. It did not spare anyone from a specific geographic area. It didn't actually spare anyone by virtue of education, by virtue of capitalism or socialism. So the content of our policies must be redefined. The concepts of our policies must actually be put on a platter where we sit and dialogue and say, we need this out, we want this in, we want this out, we want this in, for you, for me, one for all for one. That is the concept. Then most importantly, it is an attitude. Our human attitude should transcend those documents or those words written on the papers in Brussels and on the papers in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa, the African Union. Our attitude must disregard, our attitude must challenge, because if we have to lead, Paula, Joana, Tabi Joda, we should be the leaders, the ambassadors, because it is of no use giving the right message to the wrong ambassador or to the wrong messenger. And of course, we have seen global resilience. We have seen global resentment. We have seen continuous anger of how much expropriation, extractivism has caused on humanity. In the opening statement that I made here, I only changed my mind at the last hour at 9 p.m. Otherwise, I would have been moving across the Sahara Desert and risking my life across the Mediterranean Sea to go to a Europe I know nothing about, except of the dream, the misguided dream or misguided thoughts that there is milk and honey everywhere on the streets of Europe. That is why so many people from my community have died in that Mediterranean Sea, seeking that dream. And that is why I pointed out very strongly on this goal, on my conversation about how this represented a terrifying waste of youth and human potential. The people we are losing in the Mediterranean are the potentials of the earth. They are the human resources of the earth. But this cruel squandering of positive forces of the planet, because of senseless attempts of some people to capture lands and resources, is actually only hurting the world. And we must agree to that fact that where suffering is neglected, where suffering is ignored, there will be the seeds of conflict. Now we have a capitalist system that tells you that guns provide protection. I don't think that. That is falsehood. We must echo this from this hall at Elborn to Brussels and to Capitol Hill in the United States and to African Union at Addis Ababa, that guns don't bring human security. Human security is the comprehension, the putting together with compassion of the sense of humanity, empathy, compassion, love, simplicity, and the humility with which we deal, we talk, we go, we do our day-to-day activities as humans. The empathy and the consideration is, and the food that we eat, the good air that we breathe, the good lands that we see around us, the vegetation that provides the real fresh oxygen is the must and the priceless human security. The bombs, the machine guns, the AK-47s, the all produced in Kremlin and in Paris, and in Brussels, and in Washington, wherever these machineries are produced, they are the tools of falsehood. They are the tools of subjugation. They are the tools of maintaining expropriation, repression, subjugation, and disregard of the dignity of humanity. So capitalism or socialism, they should find a midpoint. That midpoint will only be defined and redefined by Paula and Joana and I by identifying what we need for the generation to come, what we need to stay out of this world that is cruelly, recklessly led by a few who so much sustain or continue to misguidedly keep a system that is failing before our eyes. These are the realities we should be talking about. And I want to repeat again, one life lost to an ecological disaster is a life too much.
Moltes gràcies, Tabi. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tabi. I would like now to open the floor for discussion to the people who have been able to come to the room. I don't know if you have any questions that you would like to address to Tabi or Joana, or any thoughts you would like to share with us. And let me remind you that you can also participate online, either in Catalan or in English, if you would like to be part of this conversation.
Alguna pregunta, alguna reflexión?
Any questions, any thoughts? There's one comment over there. Hello, can you hear me? Tabi, can you hear me? Thank you very much, Tabi, for...
I can hear you. I can hear you, Paula.
Yes, the question that I would like to address to you. Yes.
La intervenció.
I'll be brief in my question. It's a question from the floor, from someone in the room. It's not Paula. How can we from here help you to improve the bonds between what we live and what we consume? And how can we improve the impact of what we do, what we live, what we eat, so that it will have less impact on your life and on your community? What should we do? I think that the relation, that the way we live and the way and the impact that has is, we don't see the impact it has on the planet. And can you tell me if there is any way to make more visible the consequences of what we do, so that we understand the impact of our lifestyle on your everyday reality in Africa?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. I'm very pleased to hear this kind of question. It takes me to the point that I was concluding with, that the compassion we need is the quest for humanity, asking ourselves, what should we be doing together? How can we build that collaborative action that we all need right now to restore? To answer your question, my dear friend, if you go to the country called Niger, you will see thousands and thousands of previously forest land now completely a desert. These are artificial deserts, from Dosso to Tawa, and from Dosso in Niger right to Sokoto and Zamfara in Nigeria, and from Zamfara in Nigeria right to Adamawa in Nigeria, and Maiduguri, where the Boko Haram violence is going on, right to Marwa and Jamena in Chad. You can see obviously the degradation the tearing down of forest land through logging for wood. Now, I don't know where this wood goes to. We have to find out that. If you look in these forests that have, or these lands that have been torn, the forest lands that have been torn and completely desertified now, where is the wildlife? Disappeared. Where are the species that inhabited that territory, that inhabited that forest, that constituted the biodiversity of that environment? Disappeared. And what is happening below that is the complete exposure of the land by mining activities to either mine cobalt, gold, diamond, or uranium, or iron ore, or different rare earths. These are visible. I would very much love to communicate, to contact with everyone here, to share with you physical, visible, and tangible experiences on the front line of these grassroots that are actually hurting livelihoods. And because these women have to live on either harvesting shea butter nuts to convert it into shea oil to sell for a meal or for a dress on their body or for a malaria tablet for their children, they are now deprived of that right. Getting now any resource is like a privilege to them. These are the visible threats and challenges on these fields, my dear brother who asked that question. And to add to that, you can see people trekking thousands and thousands, kilometers to go and fetch water to drink. Tell me, if they have a garden and they have to travel kilometers to fetch water to drink, how much water can they fetch to water a garden to grow vegetable that they can feed their families with? These are the challenging questions of emanating from the challenging reality down here on the field where I am and where I spend my days under the rain and under the sun, trying to revive these systems. And of course, it is open, it is visible. Those doing these things, even sometimes, have to challenge us. They have to threaten us. They have to want to keep us on the side of silence. But because we are strong and resilient beyond the common fear of protecting or the common fear of confronting their threats, we are driving against all these odds. And as a way for you to support this, we need everybody. We need people who have the compassion to come with us. Let us plant these billion trees, because it is not only going to help the landscapes and the communities in Africa, it is going to help in reducing the heat waves that are already present right over there in Catalan, right over there in Barcelona. It's going to help in reducing the sand dust that are already flying and falling over your roofs. It's also going to help in reducing the critical mass of vulnerable, able Africans who ought to be constructively contributing to productive development. They are wasting their lives in the Sahara Desert, dying of thirst and hunger, or drowning in the Mediterranean Sea in a struggle to get to Europe. We can do this together by putting resources and efforts together, volunteering, contributing, supporting in planting trees, growing the trees, creating fruit crops, constructing farms, producing tools, creating new source of water, recharging lost water sources, and purifying polluted waters, and restoring the entire ecosystems and livelihoods to help these people living on the margins of our current economic system. They are disproportionately affected. And if there are any ways, I lack words to tell you how you can support us. But these, buried in the core of this project, is how to balance the relationships with the perceived North, the often perceived North-South. We are trying to bridge those gaps. create collaborative working relations where our families can cohabit, correlate, cooperate, and work together in building a thriving and flourishing Africa, restoring the landscapes, building livelihoods, sustaining ecosystems and biodiversity, and of course, creating a safe and resilient system both in Europe and in Africa. Sharing love, sharing food, sharing moments under a shade of a tree in Niger can be a very great moment for Paula and I someday to come. Sharing a moment of protecting a polluted or purifying a polluted water source in Cameroon one day between Joana and I will be a great opportunity to help humanity restore something that has been long lost. And for some people who are long forgotten, they are long forgotten, they are often neglected, they are often looked upon as the subject of those who think that they are very wise, they are very intelligent, they are more intelligent. But then, what can we do? Putting our hands together, can we plant 1 billion trees together? Yes, we can. How do we do that? We can put resources together, we can put efforts together, and we can see Greenland's flourishing from Djibouti in the east horn of Africa to the west coast of Africa in Senegal. This is a task that I have devoted my life to do, and I want you, with your compassion, to join me in this journey, because together with our compassion, we can do it against all odds.
Moltes gràcies, Tabi. No sé si hi ha alguna intervenció més.
Thank
algú
you
que
very
vulgui
much. Any further comments
compartir alguna reflexió?
from the floor? Any thoughts you would like to share?
Sí, allà, sisplau.
There's another one over there.
Ho dic en anglès o...?
Should I speak in English or should I speak in
No sé,
Catalan?
si parlo en anglès directament.
Should I speak in English directly?
Sí, si vol.
As you wish,
Si
of
m'entén,
course.
Tabi, em sent?
Will Tari hear me?
I'm hearing you.
Well, so I'm going to talk in English, so to be more direct. So yeah, you were talking, Tabi, about the visibility of the ecological conflicts there in your country, like the destruction of the environment, and that it was really important to know what is happening. But at the end, how to make those conflicts and those destructions visible to people who live really far away from those places. I mean, finally, we are really, how to say, we get used to see images, even if we are far away from those places. We see lots of images in the televisions, in the medias, in the social, on Facebook, on internet, well, and we get really used to see those images. And I'm really afraid that this catastrophic speech discourse that you were talking about at the beginning of your speech, that like seeing disaster everywhere gets a normal thing in our cosmovision, no? So I don't know if I'm clear, but I'm really afraid that we just think that this is normal, and I'm seeing that we are forgetting that it's a reality. And in this sense, I would like to ask to both of you, how do you think we have to make pedagogy going away from this catastrophic discourse, you know, like not falling in a prefabricado, algo prefabricado, ¿cómo decir? Que no sea un discurso prefabricado, lo que vayamos repitiendo constantemente.
That we are not repeating the same pre-made story. How can we propose real changes? In the end, how can we bring hope to this disaster? Because if we have this really negative view of things, how can we get out of it? If we're only talking about disasters, how can we bring hope to young people? How do you do that? How do you bring hope to young people in your daily work?
Thank you very much for your very wonderful question. Hope is very important. And like I said, these deprivations are the only thing that destroy hope. And when hope is lost, those who lost hope become objects of destruction. They become victims of vulnerabilities and risk of disasters. Yes, of course. I think another way to build us, to provide solutions like you asked, not just talking about it, is that we are talking right here in Elborn, and our discussions is echoing across the entire globe. It is already one way forward towards the solution. Another way forward towards the solution is that I invite you to see what I am doing on ground, practically, in terms of how we're empowering the local women and the local young people on how to take back their resources, on how to own the sovereignty of their resources, how to create the jobs that they need and the income that they need, and how to balance their relationship with these resources, and how to understand the importance of their resources. This understanding helps them in understanding the risk, and helping them to understand the risk. It helps them to understand what kind of resilient formulas do they need. These resilient formulas are constituting the opinions, the aggregation of ideas and opinions from the grassroots that perhaps we should be listening to now in formulating the kind of policies that we need to have in Brussels and in Ethiopia and Addis Ababa and in Washington, D.C. These are the opinions that will constitute the policy actions, the policy direction that creates the right framework that helps build the right practice for the sustainability and reduction of this risk and disasters and hazards that are present as a result of this degradation. Another very important thing to know that can be an answer to your question is
We can hear you. The connection is weak.
yes, is cheap. So we shouldn't patronize talk so much. Hello, hello.
Now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. So I was saying that these awareness, understanding of the risk down in the grassroots is helping communities to reason, to start aggregating the kind of ideas and opinions that they need to put together in building resilience against this risk and vulnerabilities. So it is now for us to start looking at how to aggregate these opinions and ideas from these communities on the front line in putting them into the white papers that should be tabled to Washington and to Brussels and to Addis Ababa in redefining the policies that should steer the policy direction, that should deliver on policy action, that should create sustainable resilient systems for these communities on the ground, not on papers. These are part of the solution. And I invite you to talk to me, to follow me, to check what I am doing and to check what these communities are doing, because they are already understanding the relationship with their resources. We should appreciate that. And we should continue to talk truth to power, because not talking truth to power only makes us accomplice to the entrenchment of the kind of actions and policies that are degrading these communities. And the lady were asking about visibility. Yes, visibility can better be created by you and I. I have sent the message to you, and let it echo from this hall at Elborn that we live in a world that is so disproportionately affected by the actions of a few people driven by extractivist and capitalist egocentrism that is affecting the commonwealth of humanity, nature. Nature is you and I, and we have to actually stand on a resilient standpoint, create the collaborations that we need. We should be talking to each other. We should be creating the dialogues that we need to craft the solutions and the conversations that will create the visibility that is needed out there. And of course, there's a growing thread of some modern media which narrates fallacy about the reality on ground, which completely creates a facade and an iron curtain to the reality on the ground. We have to challenge this, and we should be listening to the voices on the ground, not the voices that speak for the people, because we want to speak for ourselves. I am not speaking on behalf of some people. I am speaking from the ground, from the root, from the field, and from the front line, because I feel the wrath of these challenges. So can we come together with compassion? Can we look at these people and feel that woman who is carrying that baby under 40-degree hot sun and tilling the soil to grow beans that she's going to sell for $20, that she's going to be faced by a hard choice whether to use that $20 to pay school fee for her child, whom she wants to go to school, or to buy medication from her child that is being infected by malaria, or to buy a dress for that child, or to buy food for that child. These hard choices are the reality that we experience on the ground. And these realities I am sharing with you today. But I want you to turn your heart to the ground there. Visit the fields, see what is happening, so you can be also a good messenger of the reality that we all need, so we can push a strong, comprehensive, inclusive, and compassionate global system that respects each other's human dignity.
Vale. Intentaré ser.
I will try to be really brief, but I wanted to say something. Even at times of desperation, even when we think that everything is a disaster and everything is bleak, Eduardo Galeano wrote a quote that you may know. Lots of small people in small places doing small things can change the world. I know it sounds like a cliche, but when we generate small community experiences, when you meet in your neighborhood and you meet your neighbors, when you create room to understand where the food you eat comes from, when you make visible the invisible tasks so many people do in your home, because lots of people are spending time, hours, and efforts to do the curing tasks. When you see everything that is behind of what we do, we are already generating a change of mindset, because we are giving value to things that are usually not given value, to which no value is attached. This is a different discourse. Is the theory turned into practice, putting your body in it, do things, and not do them on your own, but rather along with others. And in this process of generating truth, as Tabi said, we need to be aware of the fact that we are vulnerable. We are not going to manage to achieve everything, and that's not a problem, because wherever you can't reach, somebody else will. And there will be things that we will not be able to avoid. It will be demoralizing at times. It will be hurtful and painful, but the process is important too. The process of understanding where can we move forward and where we need to stay where we are will help us understand new ways of growing, but not in economic terms. They will help us grow as persons by finding obstacles along the road and finding ways to overcome them. So let's build spaces where we can discuss, when we can think collectively, where we can listen to each other, where we can shut up and listen very often and tackle our challenges, because our life is at stake. Literally, our bodies, our soil, our land, and the planet are at stake. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. This is a first meeting, and I hope it will bear fruit. And I would like to wrap up by thanking you all for your wise words and thoughts, by your sheer commitment to change conscience and change the world. Thank you very much, Tabi. Thank you very much as well to you, Joana. Let's hope we can have further opportunities to work together. It's been an honor to have both of you here. And thank you very much to you all, to all the attendees. Let's hope we'll see you next Thursday. There will be a new session on feminist pedagogies with Bregolat and Tini Mahataya. Thank you. We'll be here.
Joana, sorry, Paula, I just want to share one last, perhaps a take home that, which might sound as a response to what one of the guests asked there. We are currently working on planting thousands and millions of trees in memories of our fellow friends and families in Europe who died for COVID-19. So we will be keeping their memories right here in Africa, planting trees for each of them. So you are welcome to send us the names and perhaps adopt a tree for the memories of the loved ones that you lost in the COVID. And of course, for any other memories, even for love or for whatever. And this is part of our effort to bridge those gaps between the North and the South. You in Europe and we here in Africa, we are one family. It is only the compassion and the understanding of love and the neighborliness that we need, the harmonious correlations that we need, that can also help us build that system that we want to see happen. And this will be a test of time, a test of reality, how well we can sustain good relations between our families in Europe and our families in Africa and everywhere around the world. So I am committed to plant trees for all of your loved ones. And for any other purpose, we have communities that need trees that you can adopt, trees in the community to plant. You can plant trees here. And of course, we can discuss after this, perhaps through Paula. And you can follow me on YouTube, you can follow me on Twitter, and you can follow me also on Instagram to support what I am doing. Supporting it is supporting the cause. Supporting it is supporting humanity. You can just change one life by just one action of support. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. And I send great love from my heart and from my family and from my communities across Africa to your own heart and to all of your own families right where you are. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.
Igualment, Tabi, moltes gràcies.
Same here. Thank you very much, Tabi.
Thank you.